For this final project, I decided upon Claude Monet. I chose Monet for a few reasons, but primarily because of his unique artworks and the impact he has made on art that continues today. So who is Claude Monet? His full name is actually Oscar Claude Monet, although this has been shortened to Claude Monet and often referred to as just Monet. He was born on November 14, 1840 in Paris, but later died November 5, 1926 at the age of 86. Monet became a French artist as well as a key figure for the Impressionist movement. But what is Impressionism? The Impressionist movement was an art movement that began in the late 1800s. Impressionists were artists that swayed from the traditional subjects and style, while also embracing modern view and reflection of the world around them. The early life of Monet. When Monet was born, his family lived in Paris. It wasn't until age 5 that Monet's family would move to the Normandy coast. It was in these early years that Monet found his love for artistry. Monet would sketch ships and come to really appreciate the world around him. Because almost the entirety of Monet's childhood was spent near the beach, we may see an influence of that in his paintings. On the right is 2 paintings done by Monet. The first, the beach at Saint-Adresse, and the second, the beach in Parville. Here we begin to see that early influence. Later, Monet would become influenced by his aunt, who also happened to be an amateur painter. Monet became encouraged to study with more local artists, but did not truly begin his works until meeting Eugene Boudin. It was then that Monet started advancing in landscape work and working with oil painting. Shortly after, Monet is called to serve in the military, but does not serve the full 2 years due to illness. After the event, Monet returns to Paris to continue his studies. Just reflecting on Monet's early life, here is a recap of all events that most likely influenced his artwork. These include childhood, experience with local artists, meeting Eugene Boudin and Monet's newfound love for oil painting, Monet's aunt, inspiration by advanced artists, and his military service. The style of the time. This included works that were exclusively done within a studio rather than on-site. The new movement called for something much more real. Many artists like Monet began creating on-site paintings. To the right, you will see 2 very different paintings conducted by Monet in light of this new technique. But what was Monet's personal style? Monet painted mostly landscapes that depicted different aspects of nature. He focused on both lighting and color within his works, and preferred to work with oils in painting and using fast brush strokes. Because Monet worked on site, he focused on perspective and angle. So now that we are aware of past influences, style, and technique, we may take a closer look into his paintings. Here, there are 3 paintings. I chose each because they depict society in that time, but also humans in activity. The first is titled Luncheon on the Grass. The title itself is very straightforward, as many of Monet's are. However, it also depicts people in a natural setting. This is also similar to the third. The third is titled The Beach at Trouville, and depicts similar aspects. Furthermore is this painting in the middle. This is Monet's The Woman in the Green Dress. While this is not completely similar to the others, each together become a good example of how Monet used different lighting and technique. Next is 3 more, and I hope that you would look at these in light of each other. Here we see an influence by nature. Each one depicts the gardens of Monet himself. They are as follows: Pathway in Monet's garden at Giverny, the garden of Monet at Argenteuil, and the artist's garden at Giverny. Next is 2 important paintings as they take inspiration from Monet's family. The first is titled Poppies, and the second is titled Woman with a Parasol, or Madame Monet and Her Son. And although these are both different from the previous, we see a consistent connection to nature. One of Monet's most fascinating works is this painting, which depicts Monet's first wife on her deathbed in 1879. Years later, Monet will go on to marry a second wife, who also dies in 1911. Not long after, Monet's oldest son, Jean, dies. These events, along with Monet's deteriorating eyesight, Monet quits painting after almost a decade. However, Monet begins again after the events of World War I. In doing so, he continues by using shades of red rather than any colors depicting nature. This photo is called Monet's 1922 painting of his house in Giverny. Next is Monet's painting titled Impression, Sunrise. In 1874, Monet helped organize the first Impressionist exhibition, in which Monet singled out this painting for particular criticism. Although this exhibition generated negative reviews, Monet would go on to hold 2 more in 1876 and 1877. While this may not have been popular then, it may be considered one of Monet's more famous artworks today. I think another thing to note is that Monet rarely and almost never leaves room for interpretation or guessing. He seemingly paints just as he perceives things. Following this is the water lily pond. Monet often painted paintings in sets, or paintings that were done many times of the same picture. We are able to see the difference in light, time, view, and color this way. Most similar to this is Monet's Water Lilies. This may be the most popular painting of Monet's, as he painted over 300 versions of this same picture. It wasn't until Monet died that he became increasingly popular. In more recent times, a version of Monet's Water Lilies sold for $40.9 million at a London auction in 2008. Claude Monet died December 5, 1926. Although he is long past, his art and influence continue to live on today. While artists still continue to seek inspiration from Monet, we also may find inspiration in his unique ability, technique, and style. Thank you.